Shabbat Shalom. Welcome back to Gaz's classroom, and for being here today. The weather's getting more lovely and unpredictable. Our study today is entitled Healing Touch. It is based on a Torah portion for the week. It is kind of piggybacking off the last couple of weeks that we've been studying, as well as last week's praise gathering study. Healing Touch. We find ourselves here in our Torah portions in this section it's like the purity manual. The purity manual in Leviticus chapters 11 through 15. Now we're not going to go through all these chapters. There is a lot. And if you've been studying along, it's very repetitive. Lots of sacrifices, lots of offerings, lots of the rituals that have to be followed. And it's interesting because there's no real magic to this. This isn't like witchcraft or hocus pocus or voodoo or anything like that. These are God's instructions, explicit instructions of how it is He wants to be worshipped, of how it is that when His children come to Him in obedience to His way, that they can draw nearer to Him. So He's making a clear path back to Him because remember, we were all separated at Eden. And because of our human nature, our fallen, sinful nature, that's the status that we're coming with. We cannot come into God's holy presence unless we've been made clean. So all of these rules, all of these instructions, are the instructions that help us draw nearer to Him. All right, in chapter 11, there were the dietary rules, clean and unclean, or permitted and unpermitted foods. All right, animals that are clean and unclean. Clean and unclean don't always have to do with food, all right? Because the unclean animals would not have been considered food in the first place. Certain animals were permitted to be eaten and others were not. Okay? And there's the distinctions that are made there, the classifications, they're there simply because Jehovah said it that way. Okay? He says these are the clean ones and these are the unclean ones. These are the ones that are acceptable for worship. These are the ones that are not acceptable for worship. These are the animals you are permitted to eat. These are the animals you are not permitted to eat. And He's just laying down the rules for His household, and that's how it is. Okay? Chapter 12 gets a little strange. Purification after childbirth. Now this purification, sometimes we think childbirth, ooh, that's messy, and we're thinking physically messy. It could get kind of intense and lots of things just coming out of everywhere. But the purification this is talking about, it's not just talking about physical dirtiness or uncleanness. It's purification because after childbirth there's blood that spills. There's a lot of body discharge. And anytime it has to do with this, it's talking about ritual purification or being ritually impure. Okay? We also learn about in chapters 13 and 14 all the laws about Sarat. Sarat. Now, Sarat, it's loosely defined, translated as leprosy. But Sarat is really any of these skin conditions that need to be looked at. Now, if you look at me and you see me every week, you might notice that my skin changes from week to week. And I have some certain types of skin conditions that we don't really know what they are. Are they healing? Are they not healing? We don't know. Back then, every skin condition was brought before the priest. And the priest needed to examine it. And there were a bunch of rules, kind of like a medical textbook, all right? A textbook that kind of gives instructions for how you know a person can be claimed as clean or pure to come closer, or if they are still defiled. We'll look at that a little bit more today. Chapter 15 also talks about bodily discharge. And anytime there is this bodily discharge, you are unclean until evening, until you wash, and then you read it in chapter 15, okay? The purity manual, it's all there. I don't want to go through it all. It's already written. It is written. All right, chapter 11, talk about clean and unclean foods. Who here, once upon a time, was eating unclean food? Oh. It's kind of an oxymoron. Unclean food, because these unclean things are not food. Okay, so they are unpermitted. Okay, to be eaten, and I'm sure at some point we all ate it. How many of us really like the flavor? Oh, we're unclean. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to break, right? It's funny. I've been making chicken bacon and turkey bacon and beef bacon, and it's funny because they're still calling it bacon. All right, you know the bacon's usually from the pig. The unclean, we're not allowed to eat it. I used to love having my bacon when I go to the hotels and those buffets. It's just incomplete if you don't get the crispy bacon, right?
I like shrimp.
You like shrimp? Yeah, you know, all the seafood, right? Especially when you go Japanese and they put it in that tempura batter. Oh yeah, that's so good. I'm sorry to be tempting you, but if you have made the decision to eat clean, you know, God bless you and more power to you. You know, we do so out of an obedience to God's ways. All right. Let's skip over chapter 11. All right. But this uncleanness is talking about ritual impurity. All right? It's not saying that if you eat this stuff, oh, you're evil, you're wicked, and you're a sinner, have nothing to do with me, you know? We don't treat each other that way. If somebody's eating something we don't eat, why are we judging them based on that? I mean, we can point them to God's instructions, and it's up to them. They decide what they're going to do, you know? You can't force people to do things the way you're doing it. And God doesn't want people to be coerced into obeying Him. That is not obedience at all. It's just compliance with grumbling in your spirit. That's not obedience. Okay? But let's get back to this uncleanness. It doesn't necessarily involve sin the way that we sometimes think of sin. Like getting pregnant, being pregnant, and giving birth is in no way sinful. God commanded us, go forth, multiply, right? He designed our bodies so that the male and female come together, they can produce a child, all right? So this is God's instruction. How could it make you sinful? You know, it's not sin as we think of it, but it does render you ritually impure, okay? Why? Because God says so. We can try to come up with reasons and dissect the text and come up with our own reasons, but for me at this point, God said so is enough for me. I'll figure out the rest later. Okay? Just like a child doesn't understand why the parents give certain instructions. It's for their benefit, it's for their good, it's for their safety, because the child is loved by their parents. Their parent sets out these rules. And the child might not understand now, but we hope they will understand one day. For now, we just want them to know because I said so. And it's good for you. They learn to trust their parents' word. Okay? Similarly, we need to learn how to trust God's word before we start contesting every single thing. Okay? There's natural and normal discharge of blood that accompanies childbirth that makes the woman unclean or ritually impure. She has to go through this entire purification process after she had given birth. And she has to stay away from the temple for a number of weeks after giving birth. Different for a boy and different for a girl, depending on what they have. If she gives birth to a girl, she has to stay way longer. If she gives birth to a boy a little bit earlier, she can come back. The Hata'at offering was usually performed as the end act in a series of rituals that took an impure person back to a state of ritual purity. And only occasionally was some defined sin the cause for the ritual impurity that was being cleansed. So not all impurity is sin. We're clear on that, right? If my kids, oh, here's the thing. I let my kids go to the park yesterday. And there were still some puddles out in the park and along the way. And they all went out on their bikes, and 20 minutes later they came back. Half of them were covered in mud, right? And I was preparing their dinner. And when they got home, I was expecting, okay, just wash your hands and come and we'll have dinner. No, we had to get them home, strip down their clothes, give them baths before they could come to the dinner table, all right? They weren't evil, they weren't wicked, they just got a little dirty and they needed to be washed, all right? Before they could be accepted at the dinner table. Sometimes I think whenever we think about being cleansed, we're always thinking about sin. That I'm evil, I'm wicked, I cannot come close to God, okay? Let's not equate all those things with sin as eternal separation from God. Oh no, I ate bacon, eternal separation from God. Oh, you're unclean for a while, you know? And there's a process getting back in. Okay? That's what was being taught to the Israelites during this period. That's why God gave them all the rules. Let's look at some of these God principles. Clean things can be defiled and degraded into a state of ritual impurity or uncleanness by committing unclean acts or contacting unclean objects. Okay? Clean things can be sanctified. They can be raised up and made holy by a decree from God. Because God says so, there you are now made clean, made holy. But no unclean thing can be elevated directly into a state of holiness. No unclean thing can be allowed in the presence of holiness. A thing that is unclean can eventually be brought into a state of holiness once it has first been brought into the intermediate state of cleanness. So it's a process. And of course, we have pictures to help us better understand. In the beginning, man was living with God. In that holy place, there was perfect union. All right, but after man ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the forbidden fruit, so to speak, they were no longer allowed to be in the presence of God's holiness. They were now defiled, made unclean. They needed to be separated. So they were common. Okay? They were put in this common state instead of in that state of holiness. Okay? And we look here, you have the opposites. Common would be the opposite of holy. If holy is set apart and special in that one place, then everything else is considered common. Clear? What's the opposite of clean? Unclean. Good. Now if you take an unclean thing and start rubbing it up against a clean thing, both things become unclean. But if you take a clean thing and you try to rub it up against the unclean thing, does it make the unclean thing clean? No? You might think you do, because let's say you spill something and then you take your Bounty paper towel and you wipe it up like that. And you think, oh, the table's clean, but now the paper towel is unclean. All right? So the clean thing cannot make the unclean thing clean. But the unclean thing can always defile the clean thing. Same thing with holiness. Okay? The common things brought into God's holiness defiles the holy. Okay? That's why we're supposed to leave the things of the world, die to ourselves, lay down all those things in order to come into the presence of God's holiness. We cannot do that if we're dragging in the things of the world. Remember Moses and the burning bush? When he went and he saw that burning bush, a voice came from the bush. And he told Moshe, remove your sandals. Take off your sandals because you're standing on holy ground. What did the sandals hold? The common dirt from the rest of the ground of the earth. It was common. And it was not allowed to come into the presence of God's holy space. Remove your shoes, lest you drag in the common into my holiness. He would not allow his holiness to be defiled. Okay? Okay, so everything, let's say everything is common. That's just all of us. Human nature, it's just what we are after the fall. Okay? Common. Here in our human, sinful state, we cannot be in God's holiness. Okay? But because of our human nature, there are certain things that we might do, such as disobedience, pride, and arrogance, all the things in our heart that make us unclean. If we harbor all those things in our heart, if we're carrying all that stuff with us and we fall into this unclean place, there's no path to God's holiness directly from that unclean space. From the unclean, we need to be washed and made clean before we are then possibly sanctified and able to come into the presence of God. We know this when we look at the tabernacle layout. There were different points. The people were able to come into the outer court offer their sacrifices, but only the priests that were already consecrated were able to take those offerings and bring them into the holy place. And then from there, only the high priest would be able to enter into the most holy place once a year. Very special, a special time, a special place, a special set-apart people, all right, because they had been consecrated, they had been purified, washed, and anointed, okay, to be able to enter into that space. So all in one, here's the common, and relatively in a state of cleanness until we've been defiled, until we've made all those choices and we've polluted our heart and our mind with unclean things. Sin and weakness and disease lead away from God's holiness into this unclean state. So from this place we need to be cleansed, and through the sacrifices then we are made clean, and then we can enter into holiness, but we need to be sanctified. This happens only because of how God had set that path back to Him. We cannot make up our own rules. We cannot make up our own path. We need to learn and understand that it's only through God's way. You know how we sing about Yeshua being the one way back to the Father? He's the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through Him. All these sacrifices, everything that we learn here in Leviticus, all right, in Exodus, all these things that we're learning in the Torah, they all point to the work of Messiah Yeshua at the cross. So all those sacrifices, all those things have been done, and we'll visit that in a second. But there's no other way except through Yeshua to be able to get back to the Father. He said so Himself. Let's look at this. Tuma, Vatahara, ritual impurity, and purity. There's a woman giving birth. She should undergo a process of purification, which includes immersing in a mikvah. A mikvah is that naturally gathered pool of water, and bringing offerings to the holy temple. All male infants are to be circumcised on the 8th day of life. And then we're reading about sarat. Sarat, often mistranslated as leprosy, is considered a supernatural plague, which can afflict people as well as garments of homes. All right? If white or pink patches appear on a person's skin, dark red or green in garments, a Kohen is summoned. Judging by various signs, such an increase in size of the afflicted area, after a 7-day quarantine, the Kohen pronounces it tameh, impure, or tahor, pure. So tameh or tahor. If they are rendered impure, then they have to remain outside, not having any contact, isolated. Does anybody remember COVID? And they said, listen, if you got COVID, you need to isolate. Everybody just isolate. You might spread something. If you understand the fear that was instilled in people, stay home, don't breathe the same air as anybody else, do all these things to protect yourself, and we just followed all these rules that they told us to do, and we thought we were doing the right thing. Because they said, do the right thing. Okay? Wear the mask, get vaccinated, stay away from people, don't go here, don't go there. If you're unvaccinated, you stay home, you are ill, you are like a leper, and you need to be isolated from the rest of society. If we understood what happened to the unvaccinated during the time of COVID, then you could start to understand what it was like for these people that were cast out, separated from their society, separated from their people, rendered ritually impure, that they could not come close to the temple, having no access to the temple sacrifices and everything else until they were considered safe. Quarantine. Sorry, I saw the word quarantine. It's triggering. I remember that. That's terrible.
We're all going to have PTSD.
We survived. Hopefully, we're stronger if that ever happens again. Leviticus 13 is like that medical rule book about looking at the skin diseases. But here, instead of the doctor, they're going to the priest. And the priest is the one that has to examine them closely. All the sores. What do they look like? All right. Who likes skin diseases? I like looking at them. I like understanding what kinds they are, you know. It's weird, but and you're looking for a cure. Everyone's looking for a cure for these diseases. Now it's interesting, the priests weren't looking for a cure. They were just looking to see whether or not the person was considered clean or unclean. That's it. Alright? If it looked contagious and it would still spread, then it's like, you know what, stay away a little longer and then come back and we'll re-examine you. Alright, just like when you go to the doctor. They're not quite sure, but we'll run some more tests and you come back and then we'll see you back in a couple weeks. Right? Same sort of situation. It's interesting though, it wasn't just the skin. It was things in the house, like mold, and things like black mold in the walls, alright? The house could be diseased, the tents that they were living in, the materials, the leathers, or the wool that contract some of these diseases, and they could be contagious. Some things had to be completely burned up, all right, because that's the only way to get rid of it and from spreading. That was also the priest's duty. He was not only the doctor, he was the home inspector, okay? And of course, we'll look closer at this at the end of the study. There are the very detailed laws of cleansing a person with sarat. Once again, they said leper, but it's not leprosy the way we know leprosy. It's just the person holding that skin disease. Okay? We'll get back to that one in a second. You see the priest inspecting, and then they have to prepare them for the rest of the rituals. Where do we first hear about sarat in the Bible? Remember in Exodus chapter 4? It's in the wilderness. Moshe is getting some notes with Yehovah before he had to go back to Egypt. And Yehovah was preparing him. One of the first things that he said was, put your staff out, and the staff turns into a snake. And then he takes it back in his tail, by the tail in his hand, and it turns back to a staff. And that was one of the wonderful works that God was showing. This is my chosen person. Of course, you know the story. All the other magicians of Pharaoh were able to replicate that same staff turning into snakes. So then as another proof, Yehovah said here, put your hand in your coat. Moshe did that, and when he withdrew his hand, it was they said leprous hand. It was sarat, okay, with diseased skin. Then he put it back in his coat, and when he withdrew it, it was healed. Okay. In verse 9, it talks about the water from the river that turned into blood when they poured it out on the dry land. Okay. But there's that sarat. And the understanding that a person with sarat, they really couldn't heal themselves. Sometimes, like, it was so bad, certain conditions, they were just completely cast out. And they had to walk through town covering their upper lip and call out, unclean, unclean, whenever they came into town, so that everybody else could clear the way. All right, that sort of leprous disease, the sarat, that was evident on the hand, only God could heal that. Okay. Sarat, usually translated leprosy, refers to a variety of skin diseases. The diagnosis and certification of cure were the responsibility of the Kohanim. According to biblical law, those inflicted with sarat were considered unclean and were isolated until the disease was healed as a precaution to prevent the spread of disease. Historically, the rabbis have seen sarat as an outward sign of an inward problem. Have you heard that one before? An outward sign of an inward problem The disease is a result of Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is a speaking evil of other people, slanderous talk, evil speech. Okay? Lashon, the tongue. According to rabbinical sources, the root cause of Sarat was spiritual, that was manifesting in the physical. According to Torah, the sages note that far from the bacterial malady, leprosy reflected the spiritual condition of the person who had contracted it. Based on Leviticus 13, Judaism points to a more holistic understanding, noting that the practice of gossip or slander opens a door for both spiritual and physical oppression and illness. The punishment meted out on Miriam, remember Miriam, Moshe's sister? She spoke or gossiped against her brother, the leader of the Hebrew people, that caused her to have Sarat. In both the Tanakh and the Brit Hadashah, the importance of guarding one's words is critical. All right, who's ready to hear this today? Who needs to be guarding their tongue, guarding their speech? And I think at some level, we all do. All right, especially with those that are closest to us. Oh yeah, so easy. So easy to let out on the people we're most comfortable with, the ones we ought to love and respect and journey with, but it's so easy for us to spew at them, maybe because it's safe. They already see us in our ugliness, so why not just be ugly, right? Guard your words, James 1:26. Anyone who thinks he is religiously observant but does not control his tongue is deceiving himself, and his observance counts for nothing. Right? Remember, your religious observance, you cannot gain your righteousness. All right? You can't gain your salvation. You can do the things that are right, all right? But no matter what we do, we can't make ourselves righteous. Okay? It's only God that could declare us righteous. Right? But some people get puffed up. Well, I'm following Torah. I'm following all of God's instructions. I wear tzitzit, you know. I keep the feasts. I keep Shabbat. I eat clean. And we think we're doing all the right things as though there's some, what's the word? As though we really get credit for that, right? And then we turn and we talk and we say, did you see those people eating pork? Did you see our brother? He picked up bacon. Can you believe they ate shrimp at dinner? Why are you laughing? Because you've done it? Or you were a victim of it? Right? We laugh and we chuckle, and you know, we're all guilty of it. All right, maybe let's be honest about that. All right? It's important we do not deceive ourselves. All right? Thinking that we're holier than others. Okay? My son's favorite song to Luke 6, chapter 45. The good person produces good things from the store of good in his heart, while the evil person produces evil things from the store of evil in his heart. For his mouth speaks what overflows from his heart. So if you really want to know what's on your heart, just start talking. All right? It's funny, maybe you've seen it on movies, maybe you've experienced it yourself, but you go to the therapist's office, and you sit down and you don't think that there's anything to talk about. And the therapist just sits there and like an hour goes by, okay, see you next week, they didn't talk about anything, comes back and they're like, oh, why am I here? I'm not going to talk about anything. Eventually the person breaks. Eventually you broke. And you decide to start speaking. And you start giving the therapist something to work with. Oh, well, now I know what's on your heart. How do they know? It's coming off your mouth. Sometimes it's not even the words you're saying. It's the way you're saying it. Maybe there's contempt for somebody. Maybe you hear something else behind the words that are coming out the mouth. That comes out too. All right? What's on your heart today? If you're unsure, try this. When you pray to God, don't just do it in your head. When you pray to God, put it on your lips. Don't be afraid. You know, I used to hear people at church tell me, when you pray to God, do it silently. Because you don't want the enemy to know what you're struggling with. I'm like, no, you know what? I'm going to pray to God. I'm going to put it on my lips. And the enemy knows that I'm taking those things to my Father. He knows that I'm lifting these things up and asking God for help. The enemy has no stronghold over you when you're coming before the Father, trusting in Him. Okay? Don't do it quietly. Don't do it by yourself. If you're struggling with a sin, you confess your sin to a brother or sister. You pray for one another. That's part of the sanctification process. Guard your words, guard your heart. Some people choose just to be silent so nobody knows what they're thinking. Smart people, but then you never really know what you're thinking. Yeah.
It's like when we say something, I remember when I was reading, it's like saying an oath when we say it out loud, right? Or else if we keep it, like, there's no oath because we didn't say it out loud, but if we say something, it's like an oath, right?
Similarly to pledging an oath.
Yes,
No.
it's like say, I promise, I say, well, Abba, I promise this to you.
Oh yeah, be careful when you're making oaths.
Yes, to God, yes.
To God, because you're held to that.
Yes, yes.
Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. I want you to take a moment and just think about how you speak to those around you. Are you kind? Are you thoughtful? Are you loving? Are you selfish? Are you angry? What comes off your mouth? Are you cursing the world? Are you blessing others? It all comes off the same tongue. Curse and blessing all come from the same place. And it starts in the heart. All right? So imagine what happens if our heart is defiled and it's unclean. What's going to start coming off your mouth? If you fill your mind, fill your brain, okay? In the Hebrew thought, the mind, the heart, it's all one. It's that inner part of us, and we feed that based on what we consume. Okay, that's why it's called feeding, because you're consuming it. What you listen to, what you view, okay? It's like your heart figures out the algorithm. You know, like your phone, your computer. When you start clicking on certain things, I like this, I like that, I'm interested in this, I'm following this. They start to see, well, this is this person's interests. We'll just feed them more of this. So if it's conspiracies that you start clicking on, more conspiracies. All right, if it's Torah that you start clicking on, more Torah. If it's health and healing and stuff like that, beauty and all that stuff, you click on it and you get more of that. Maybe it's sports and entertainment and you're following NBA and everything on your feed is just basketball. I have that strange thing that I do. I watch roller coaster videos, and not only do I watch them, I share them with my friends because life is a wild ride. And you guys know, and the more videos that I click and share, the more of them I get fed. And I'm like, I like this. Because all the roller coasters, I don't even have to search for them. They're already there. Friends, I want you to consider your heart and the things you are consuming. All right? I want you to think about how you're feeding yourself mentally, spiritually. How are you spending your time? Where are you spending your money? Where are you spending your efforts? All right, all these things, how you feed and what your output is, it's like you're making agreements with certain things, and that firms up the things, the state of your heart. That's why we're told not to conform to the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Renewing our mind, let our mind be made new, just like the moon. The moon renews every month. It's on a cycle. And then at the full moon, it's bright, and then it goes back to this dark place. And sometimes that's like us. We might be all on fire for God and praising Him, all everything's wonderful, and we go through these changes, and then we end up at this dark place again. And we need to be renewed and brought back.
I'm just thinking, like, you know, in Matthew, when God is saying, like, love your enemies, because it's easy to love those, like, your friends and family, right? It's easy to be good to them. And that kind of speaks to, like, what is your default setting? Because to the stranger, right, it's like, oh, nobody sees me, he cut me off, or he took the last, like, banana that I was going to get at the grocery store. And when you speak out of, like, that overflow, like, that's the default setting, because it's easy when it's like, oh, I talk nice to my family, this and that, or my friends, right? I'm nice to them. Like, I talk nice things. But when you look at your default setting here, oh, it was just in the moment, like I had a bad day or whatever. That's your default setting.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's some people that the same thing happens to them. It's like Richard always said, it's not what happens around you, it's what's inside.
Yep.
Like, that's what makes you different. And so there's some people, like, something bad happens to them, but they don't get mad like I do and then try to honk the horn or whatever, right? It's a way for you to kind of like test yourself. Is what is your default setting?
Sure. Yeah, all those times are opportunities where we are tested. It reveals what's on our heart. I had a bad reaction last night. I was having dinner with the kids. It was my son's birthday. Everything was great. I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this. He ate a lot. He was really enjoying himself. Everything's good. Dinner was finally done. We just had cake. Everything's wonderful. And I told you they already had the mud when they came in from the all showered and everything, so this is the same night. And then after dinner, my son, he goes to the garbage in the kitchen, and he's starting to spit a little, and all of a sudden he just throws up everything, all over the floor. And I hadn't started working on the study for today yet. Like, nothing was done, nothing was and it had been a long day. Celebrating his birthday, everything was fine, you know. And then that happened, and I was like, come on! And I realized my son got startled because of my reaction. I said, buddy, look, no, it's okay. I just need to clean you up. Okay, just move that and don't step on anything. We'll get you cleaned up. But in that moment, my initial reaction, sure, frustration is frustration. And that's what gets us. But in the moment, I'm just like, thank God I saw his expression. It made me fix my attitude right away. It made me capture where I could have gone, and then I chose to obey God. I'm like, no, just, we'll be all right. Let's clean this up. We just got to do what we got to do. I could have chosen to be upset at him for feeling sick. How can you do that? The kid felt sick, like he had to get it out. He wasn't being a bad boy. He wasn't, you know. And for me to react that way as though he did something to me, like, that's not for him to bear. Okay? We are all responsible for what comes off our hearts. We do not spew that on other people around us. That is how we defile that common place. Now, I'm not saying you don't shoulder burdens. Confess your sins to each other. I say that all the time. Share what's on your heart, but don't spew and make other people afraid, make other people fear. We are responsible for what comes off our mouth. It reveals what's in our heart. And sometimes what's revealed, we don't like. It's ugly. But we have to face it. Mark 7:20-23. It is what comes out of a person, he went on, that makes him unclean. For from within, out of a person's heart, come forth wicked thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, indecency, envy, slander, arrogance, foolishness. All these wicked things come from within, and they make a person unclean. This was brought about because they were saying, oh, they didn't ritually wash their hands before they partook. But then they're saying, it's not what goes in you that defiles you. It wasn't talking about clean or unclean food. It was talking about that ritual cleansing of washing your hands before taking the meal. This is what was said. It's not what goes in you that defiles you, but it's what is from within. Okay? one of the most humbling passages I have come across in the Bible, a great reminder and a great encouragement, all at the same time. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 9 to 11. Don't you know that the unrighteous people will have no share in the kingdom of God? Don't delude yourselves. People who engage in sex before marriage, who worship idols, who engage in sex after marriage with someone other than their spouse, who engage in active or passive homosexuality, who steal, who are greedy, who get drunk, who assail people with contemptuous language, who rob, none of them will share in the kingdom of God. Some of you used to do these things, but you have cleansed yourselves. You have been set apart for God. You have come to be counted righteous through the power of the Lord Yeshua the Messiah and the Spirit of our God. You don't make yourself clean. There's nothing you can do to make yourself clean. You may have been guilty of doing these things in your past, all right? Such were some of you. Some of you used to do these things. But you have cleansed yourselves. The only way we cleanse ourselves is by allowing God to do that work. By submitting ourselves to Yeshua. By being united with the Messiah. That's the only way we can cleanse ourselves. Because we willfully choose to be cleansed by Him. And He is powerful to do it. Okay? These passages here from our Torah portions for the week. This is from the Great Hadashah in Luke chapter 8, verses 41 to 48. Then there came a man named Yair, who was the president of the synagogue. Falling at Yeshua's feet, he pleaded with him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, and she was dying. As he went, with the crowds on every side virtually choking him, a woman who had had a hemorrhage for 12 years, and could not be healed by anyone, came up behind him and touched the seat on his robe. Instantly, her hemorrhaging stopped. Yeshua asked, "Who touched me?" When they all denied doing it, Kepha said, "Rabbi, the crowds are hemming you and jostling you." But Yeshua said, "Someone did touch me, because I felt power go out of me." Seeing she could not escape notice, the woman, quaking in fear, threw herself down before him and confessed in front of everyone why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. He said to her, "My daughter, your trust has saved you. Go in peace." It's interesting, the picture of the fringes, the seat that Yeshua was wearing. And we're told she reaches for the fringe, the hem of his garment. All right, in all other translations, but she's reaching for the seat. And the seat reminds us of God's law. It reminds us of God's Torah. Reminds us of God's promises. And His faithfulness. And His plan of salvation. There's no magic in the fabric. There's no magic in the seat, but what it represents. Imagine carrying something like that for 12 years, being an outcast. Knowing you had no access. No healing had come your way. And And she knew she wasn't supposed to be there. But she pressed in and she pursued Messiah. And he said, my daughter, your trust, your faith has healed you. Excuse me. We read about the account in another gospel. It's kind of a continuation of what we just read. A woman who had had hemorrhage for 12 years approached him from behind and touched the seat on his robe. For she said to herself, if I can only touch his robe. I can only touch his robe, I will be healed. Yeshua turned and saw her and said, courage, daughter, your trust has healed you, and she was instantly healed. When Yeshua arrived at the official's house and saw the flute players and the crowd in an uproar, he sent everybody out. The girl isn't dead, she's only sleeping. And they jeered at him. But after the people had been put outside, he entered and took hold of the girl's hand, and she got up. News of this spread through all that region. Here's that official that invited Yeshua to come because his daughter was dying, and when he arrived there, she was already dead. Defilement. Again, you don't touch the dead body, you're rendered ritually impure, unclean. But Yeshua went and he had the power. Death couldn't keep him. He had authority over death. He had authority over the illness. He had authority over sin. This is what he was proclaiming. And he touched people. And he let people touch him and draw near. He was giving hope to these people, and these people, they were coming. It was their trust, it was their faith. They believed. That was enough. When I was able to start appreciating the seat a little bit more, I had never read this story the same way ever again. We hang on to God's word. We hang on to his instructions. We hang on. There is life in it. It's the way to life. Anything apart from him, apart from his word, apart from his truth, it's just common. Matthew 8, verses 1 to 17. After Yeshua had come down from the hill, large crowds following him. Then a man afflicted with Zarat came, kneeled down in front of him, and said, Sir, if you are willing, you can make me clean. I love that. Sir, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Yeshua reached out his hand, touched him, and said, I am willing. Be cleansed. And at once he was cleansed from his Zarat. Then Yeshua said to him, see that you tell no one, but as a testimony to the people, go and let the Kohen examine you and offer the sacrifice that Moshe commanded. As Yeshua entered Capharnaum, a Roman army officer came up and pleaded for help. Sir, my orderly is lying at home paralyzed. and suffering terribly. Yeshua said, I will go and heal him. But the officer answered, Sir, I am unfit to have you come into my home. Rather, if you will only give the command, my orderly will recover. For I too am a man under authority. I have soldiers under me, and I say to this one, Go, and he goes. To another, Come, and he comes. To my slave, Do this, and he does it. On hearing this, Yeshua was amazed and said to the people following him, Yes, I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such trust. Moreover, I tell you, that many will come from the east and from the west to take their places at the feast in the kingdom of heaven with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. But those born of the kingdom will be thrown outside in the dark, where people will wail and grind their teeth. Then Yeshua said to the officer, Go, let it be for you as you have trusted. And his orderly was healed at that very moment. Yeshua went to Kepha's home, and there saw Kepha's mother-in-law sick in bed with fever. He touched her hand. The fever left her, and she got up and began helping him. When evening came, many people held in the power of demons were brought to him. He expelled the spirits with a word and healed all who were ill. This was done to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet Yeshayahu. He himself took our weaknesses and bore our diseases. When Yeshua heard these things, he marveled at him and turned around and said to the crowd that followed him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. He was a Gentile. This Roman officer, he was a Gentile. And he believed, he trusted. He believed that Yeshua had the authority to heal. He didn't even need him to come in. You know, Yeshua said, I'll go and I'll heal him. He said, no, just say the word and I know it'll be done. Very different from Naaman. You guys remember Naaman? He was called Naaman the leper, all right, commander of the army. And he went and he wanted the prophet to heal him. So he heard about this prophet and he made the trek out to see the prophet. The prophet didn't even come out of his house. He sent the servant girl out. All right, and my master says, go wash in the Jordan 7 times. Right? Go wash in the river 7 times. He's like, why will I wash there? There are other places that I could go to, cleaner water, you know. And he was appalled. He said, why would the prophet not come out to see me? I'm this great commander. He should come out and greet me at least. He should come out and touch me. Wave his hand over me. Do something. No, he was kept apart from the leprous man. And told him, all you need to do is go dip in the water 7 times. And the pride in his heart was showing. Why should I dip in the filthy water? There's other cleaner places I can go. And then some reason was spoken to him. If all you need to do is dip 7 times in the water, that's such an easy thing to do. Why not do it? What do you have to lose? Just go and do it. Hesitantly, he went and he dipped. 1 came up, Sarat. 2 came up, still Sarat. 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Come on, man, this water is filthy. How's it going to clean me? 1 more time. 7th time. And he's healed. Just as was said. Because it took that many times. How many times do we feel like we're ready to give up? Because we're not anywhere closer to what we hope for. How many times do we just feel like this isn't going anywhere, I should just give up now? His faith, it wasn't even his faith. He was doubting almost the whole way through. He still had pride in his heart. But imagine what happens to a prideful heart when they're humbled the way that Naaman was humbled in that moment. I thought I knew better. But he dips that last time and he comes up and he realizes, whoa, what was said is true. How humbling that must have been for him then. What a change of heart he must have had that day. Sometimes our faith is tested, and we feel that we're failing the tests. We feel that our faith might be weak. But friends, God allows us to go through the testing. And He allows our character to develop through that testing. He allows us hardships to go through, and He wants us to endure through it so that He could build us up with the character that He wants so that we could be right for His kingdom. You see that? It's not punishment when bad things happen to you, but we all have to go through hard stuff. But how's your heart when you're going through the hard stuff? Are you looking for quick fixes from the world? Are you seeking God and His higher ways? They might not make sense to us, but His ways are the best ways. It's always better.
Something that I learned when I had to go through something hard, first reaction, God, you must have something in mind for letting this happen. It hurts, it's painful, but I trust you. But still, you have to go through the difficulty. But then, if we change our mind off ourselves and look to them, He always helps. You must have a good reason for letting this happen.
You just got to stick around to see what that is.
Exactly.
What comes out of us, what comes out of our heart. What happened when Yeshua died on the cross? What came out of Him? Blood and water came out of Yeshua's side when He was pierced on the cross. Water is the purifying agent, making the unclean clean. The blood is the atoning agent, making the clean holy. Remember the temple sacrifices? Blood was taken from the front where the animal was slaughtered, put on the horns of the altar, and goes into the other place, and there's the blood that had to be spread. Even on the priests, as they were consecrated, blood needed to be splattered on their face and put on their body. And the leprous people, when they were cleaned as well, you know what? The blood of the sacrifice would go on their right ear, their right thumb, their right big toe. Weird. It's like, what is that, God? And only the right side. But that blood, it's the atoning agent, the covering that makes it okay to draw near. Hebrews 9:22, according to the law, almost all things are purified with blood, and without the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness of sin. That's why Yeshua had to die on the cross. That's why the first sign of the covenant between Abraham and Jehovah was the circumcision, and there was blood there. All right, the blood that was shed from all the men. All right. There was some symbols there that God wanted us to pay attention to. Leviticus 17:11, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for your souls upon the altar, for it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul. Working the other way, holy over here, unclean over here. The common, let's call it common, but it's a naturally clean state, unless it's become defiled. The unclean has no mixture with holiness. The unclean and the clean may both be common, but the tameh has to be clean, tahor, so that they could be made kadosh at some point. If you remain in an unclean state, defiled, the only endpoint you have would be death. Because life comes from God who is holy. This is where real life is. Healing and life come through the sanctification process. I'm telling you, that sanctification process, it involves a lot of growing pains, a lot of discomfort, a lot of ugliness that you just kind of get through. There's a lot of stripping away of the things that we hold so dear. And God says, I need to strip that away from you. I'm going to make you clean. You're not going to like it. It's going to be painful. But friends, eventually healing comes. Can you trust that? Can you trust Him?
One of the scariest things is losing friends and family or following God. That's it.
God will strip away people in your life, right? Yeah, absolutely. That's a painful thing. All right, very quickly. There's a priestly instruction, all right, about the Surat, right? There's a preparation for the purification. It involves like cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet yarn, all symbols. Some of them actually do have some natural healing properties, but of course we're talking about ritual cleansing. There are two birds, the ritual of the two birds, where the blood of one is spilled into the clean water, and then the other clean bird is dipped into the water that has the shed blood. So we get the picture of blood and water in the same place. And then the living bird that's dipped in the bloodshed water is then released, and it symbolizes the carrying away of the sin. Okay? The cleansing, it leaves the leper, it leaves the person with Surat. Okay? And they get a visual image of that. And then they're sprinkled clean with the hyssop and the cedar wood. Okay? There's a personal purification that happens as well. After they've been declared that the Surat is gone, they also have the part where they needed to wash their robes. They had to wash themselves, bathe. Okay? There's a personal purification, so there's an action that is still required of us. That's why it says clean your robes. When you come to God, you clean your robes. You wash yourself. Remember at Mount Sinai, all the people before Jehovah descended on the mountain? He said, for 3 days, consecrate yourselves. Right? Wash your robes. Have no sexual relations with your spouse. Just everything, all that defilements, just stop. For 3 days, cleanse yourself so you can come meet me at the base of the mountain. And then, of course, there are the final sacrifices, all which were fulfilled in Yeshua. But once we appreciate this process, friends, we can't just say, oh, well, Jesus died on the cross for me, everything's great. We don't understand anything about what it means coming close to God. We take for granted all of it. We could still be living in all our filth, living in our worldly stuff, and we say, well, I believe, so at least I'm saved. Friends, if you're still defiled by the things of the world, what makes you think that healing's going to come? What makes you think that you'll really be saved if your trust, your faith is not in Yeshua? You could say with your mouth that you trust in Him, but everything else that comes off your heart doesn't prove that. It doesn't show that. You are disobedient to the ways of God. You despise it. You encourage others not to follow God's ways. The end is near, friends, and we cannot keep playing this game of I believe Him, I'm a follower, yet you don't really believe, and you don't really follow. It's just lip service, but God's looking at your heart. This isn't to scare you. This is to get you serious. Look in your heart. Present it before God. The priest is to take some of the blood from the guilt offering and put it on the right earlobe of the one to be cleansed and the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, there's the blood. And then the priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the right earlobe of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. Now this is different. This is blood and oil. It's a little different from blood and water. The water is cleansing, the blood is atoning, and the oil is anointing. See that? It's one thing to be washed and cleansed, okay? To be atoned for, covered over. But then there's to be chosen, to be anointed for a purpose, for God's kingdom purposes. As a royal priesthood, all who believe in Him, you have been made clean. You have been made holy. And you have been chosen to live out doing the good works you do, that others will come and praise your Father in heaven. Live as a royal priesthood. All right? Declare from a pure heart. If you see a brother or sister that is ready to give up, yes, you can pray behind their back. Yes, you can try and speak truth into their life. I think the best thing we can do, friends, to remind each other, to encourage each other and spur one another on, is that we live faithfully. I pray that that would help spur somebody else on. You know, my sister runs these marathons. You know, she does these races. My nephew does it too. Oh, let's talk about my nephew. He's not even running, like, he's just training, and then he'll run a full marathon when he's training. Just for fun. Okay? His sisters decided to start running too. And they just keep running. And they go on vacation to run. Especially during the winter. There's places. In the winter, it doesn't matter, like, as they run in the snow. Okay? And there's 3 of them, right? And the third one started running too. And they kind of spur each other on, and there's this encouragement, and they're like, well, I'm doing it, I'm running the race, I'm running. And they're working toward a goal, and they sign up for these races, right, or these walks, or whatever it is, and they're training for it. You don't wait until the day of the race to start running. You gotta be running, practicing. You gotta be doing this stuff now. And whenever the test comes, or whenever that day comes, you're ready for it. And it's about endurance, so that you don't give up halfway through. So what are we doing spiritually to spur each other on, while sometimes our faith is shaken, sometimes our faith is tested, sometimes we don't see the end point, we just have to keep running this race, friends. Keeping in step with God's Spirit along the way. Okay? And we don't give up on meeting together. We encourage each other. Let's wrap this up. Romans chapter 6, the whole chapter. So then, are we to say, let's keep on sinning so that there can be more grace? Heaven forbid! How can we, who have died to sin, still live in it? Don't you know that those of us who have been immersed into the Messiah Yeshua have been immersed into His death? Through immersion into His death, we were buried with Him, so that just as through the glory of the Father, the Messiah was raised from the dead, likewise we too might live a new life. For if we have been united with Him in a death like His, we will also be united with Him in a resurrection like His. We know that our old self was put to death on the execution stake with Him, so that the entire body of our sinful propensities might be destroyed, and we might no longer be enslaved to sin. For someone who has died has been cleared from sin. Now, since we died with the Messiah, we trust that we will also live with him. We know that the Messiah has been raised from the dead, never to die again. Death has no authority over him. For his death was a unique event that need not be repeated, but his life, he keeps on living for God. In the same way, consider yourselves to be dead to sin, but alive for God, by your union with the Messiah Yeshua. Therefore, do not let sin rule in your mortal bodies, so that it makes you obey its desires. And do not offer any part of yourselves to sin as an instrument for wickedness. On the contrary, offer yourselves to God as people alive from the dead, and your various parts to God as instruments for righteousness. For sin will have no authority over you, because you are not under legalism, but under grace. Therefore, what conclusion should we reach? Let's go on sinning because we're not under legalism, but under grace? Heaven forbid. Don't you know that if you present yourselves to someone as obedient slaves, then of the one whom you are obeying, you are slaves? Rather of sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to being made righteous. By God's grace, you who were once slaves to sin, obeyed from your heart the pattern of teaching to which you were exposed. And after you had been set free from sin, you became enslaved to righteousness. I am using popular language because your human nature is so weak. For just as you used to offer various parts as slaves to impurity and lawlessness, which led to more lawlessness, so now offer your various parts as slaves to righteousness, which leads to being made holy, set apart for God. For when you were slaves of sin, you were free in relationship to righteousness. You were freed in relationship to righteousness. But what benefit did you derive from the things of which you are now ashamed? The end result of those things was death. However, now freed from sin and enslaved to God, you do get the benefit. It consists in being made holy, set apart for God, and its end result is eternal life. For what one earns from sin is death, but eternal life is what one receives as a free gift from God in union with the Messiah Yeshua our Lord. Here's a reminder for all of you. As followers of Yeshua, if your trust is in him, you believe in his death, burial, and resurrection, you identify with him, that you too were put to death on that execution stake, and you too now live in righteousness with him. You were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified. You were made right with him. What more can you ask for? I mean, that's the whole thing. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. May the grace of our Lord Yeshua and the shalom of Yehovah our Father be with us all.
Amen.